Hi, Misha here, and partially because of popular demand, and partially because it's the only rifle Arsenal and their distributors seem to have in stock this summer, we're going to revisit and expand upon the SLR-107R. We did a video a little while ago comparing it with the Romanian Cugir WASR10, and in that video I basically concluded, taking price and everything else into consideration, I kind of prefer the WASR. There people asked, what about this compared with the WBP Fox? So we'll do that today. And I thought we would compare it with a few other guns and just kind of generally talk about what it is and what it isn't. First though, let's go to the range and put the first couple of rounds through this one. I have zero doubt it will function just fine, but hey, weirder things have happened. Good. Arsenal SLR-107R, first shot. Didn't hold up. So yeah, the 107R worked just fine. So feature-wise, just a brief rundown. This is a Bulgarian import, imported into the U.S. by Arsenal Incorporated, Las Vegas, Nevada. It is all Bulgarian except for the pre-required parts for 922R. On this one, those tend to be the buttstock, pistol grip, handguards, I believe, yeah, and trigger group. The newer Arsenal trigger groups and their stamped guns are actually a fine group copy of the Molot, the Russian Molot Vepr semi-auto trigger group. It has a 16 1/4 cold hammer forge, chrome line barrel. The muzzle has a simple nut that's removable, threaded 14x1 left hand. It has a standard AKM bayonet lug under the gas block. It accepts standard AKM, AK-74 furniture. It has a stamped 1.0mm receiver. It is chambered for 7.62 by 39 and feeds from all standard AK magazines, 20, 30, 40 round box, 75 round and 100 round drum. All that. And much can be said for the Fox here. This too comes in 16 1/4 inch chrome lined cold hammer forged barrel. The barrel's made by FB Radom, Poland. Threaded 14x1 left hand, bayonet lug under the gas block. Takes standard AKM, AK-74 handguards. Standard pistol grip. One minor difference: the buttstock is slightly different because this has the barrel style scope mount plate back here. Standard stocks have to be modified a bit to fit, or barrel stocks will fit without modification. But when I say a bit, I mean just a bit here. It's not much at all. It's a little square, and if you absolutely hated it, you could just trim all those off, which some people have done. RPW. This has a 1.0mm stamped receiver, and it too feeds from all standard magazines and is chambered for 7.62 by 39. These are built in Poland by WBP, although some parts are contracted from FB Radom. And these are imported by Arms of America, but often distributed by Atlantic Firearms. And just for completeness' sake, let's show the Fox at the range, as we have a good bit of footage from over the years. Fox. Fox. Good. So, the broad strokes, these are very similar guns, and the WASR as well. Differences. We already talked about the stock for a minute. The Arsenal has a kind of matte paint finish, which some have criticized. And the WBP has a slightly glossier paint finish, which some have also criticized. But both are military level finishes, Bulgaria and Poland respectively. The bolt carriers are a little different. The WBP up here has a polished in the white carrier, and it is not lightning cut. Now, this may vary between on the models, just depends. This is how mine is. The Arsenal here has a painted bolt carrier with a lightning cut. The WBP has a traditional 45-degree AKM gas block. The SLR-107 has a 90-degree. One thing, the barrel on the WBP is a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier. But when I say that, I mean just by an nth degree. That's because this is based on the AKM, and actually this is more based on the AK-74. Bulgaria never made the AKM. They jumped straight from the milled AK-47 Type 3 and their variants of it to the AK-74, and then kind of back to the milled. So when they did the barrels, it's actually one of the lighter profiles for 7.62 available. But to be fair, the same can be said for Russian guns like the Sega, so that's not a detraction, just something to point out. Also, this has a standard AKM AK-74 ribbed top cover, whereas the WBP has a slightly heavier smooth top cover, kind of like a SGL-31 or Polish Tantal. Now the 107R with the full Bulgarian mag. Fox. I want to look at the receiver for a minute and point out a couple of things. Now, these are purely cosmetic, not functional. But I want you to look at how the magwell dimple is shaped here. And also how the pivot pin stamps are done here. Notice there's no Y stamp for the third pin, and the X stamp here is. Now look at the WBP. Note this shape, and note the Y here where the third pin would have gone if this were a machine gun. This also has a scope rail, side mount, as does this. The 107R has, proven reliable. You can't knock it for that. But comparing the two, the reason both Dre and I own WBPs and don't own SLRs, at least one of them, the WBP is pretty much a Polish AKM. The SLR just has more of a commercial feel. Both have nice bolts, bolt travel for a stamped gun. But the WBP bolt is just a little bit smoother. And both actually have very respectable triggers. But I do like the more rounded, softer shape of the WBP. But that said, I put quite a few of these fine trigger groups in my other guns, so this is more of a modern look. This is more of a traditional. Again, both have been well built. Both have, for example, forged trunnions, machined bolts, all the stuff you really need to have. They both have well done rivets and should hold up just fine. But the 107R was really made for the US market. And it's not that the WBP was not, but kind of moving away from it for a moment and talking more about this gun's place in the Arsenal catalog. So let's run a few more rounds through it and then kind of compare it more with Arsenal stuff. And this gun here is probably the central reason I don't own an SLR-107R. This is my Bulgarian Arsenal SAM7R, SAM7R. And this was Arsenal's flagship model, or rather the SLR-101 was back in 2001. Then it would disappear. It would come back in 2011, the SLR-101S, and then it would have its name changed to the SAM7R in 2012. Then a whole video or two on the Arsenal history, so I'm not going to go into that now. But this was the flagship kind of baseline model, fixed buttstock, milled receiver. This is what Arsenal was just always famous for, milled receivers. Virtually everyone else in the world switched to stamped, and even the few that held out making milleds eventually got away from it in the 80s or 90s, but not Arsenal. And this is a semi-automatic version of their ARM-1, a military gun found select fire in their catalog. It is chambered for 7.62-39. It takes standard AK Type 3 furniture for a milled receiver. It takes standard magazines, double stacks. Has the 90-degree gas block, bayonet lug. Now this one originally came with 14mm threads. I put the 24mm front sight base on it. Both are correct, both have been done in military configurations, and it too has the side rail. What the SLR-107R is the same gun, but on a stamped receiver, at least for all intents and purposes. And this was introduced back in 2015 as their economy or entry-level model with an introductory price of $799, expected to go up to around $849, maybe $899 in time. Fair enough. And this one back then was around $1,100 to $1,200, so a significant savings, but the only difference being the switch from milled to stamped receiver. So what did that change really do? Well, let's show some range footage of the SAM 7R, then we'll talk a bit about it. SAM 7R. SAM 7R, by the way. I really do enjoy shooting the mill guns. One benefit to stamped: it is lighter. You lose a pound or more in weight. Yeah, 1.0mm stamped steel is lighter than a block of ordnance steel. But what you lose is smoothness. The bolt travel, while very respectable on the SLR-107R, is a stamped receiver. And Jay and I both feel that the WBP is still smoother. And again, whereas the fine trigger that comes in these is perfectly fine, the double hook machine trigger that comes in the mill guns is just very nice. It's still a military trigger. Don't expect match grade, but for what it is, very nice. And the weight on this really helps with recoil. This gun is a kitten to shoot. The 107R, while it's not unpleasant, seems to jump around a little more than the WBP, the WASR, and definitely the SAM 7R. What we've noticed, manufacturers, and this is more in the AR-15 community, but it has crept into the AK a little bit, when they make a gun for commercial purposes, not military, they tend to use oversized gas ports to ensure reliability even with low grade or inconsistent ammo like Tula ammo. Because people, when they buy a gun, they want it to be reliable. They're not going to complain to the company much if it's a little punchier than they expected. But if it doesn't cycle even the lowest grade ammo, they will get complaints. So it's kind of something they've been forced to do. But again, you do lose a bit of shooting comfort. And of course, that could be translated to accuracy in groups as well. One positive, though, I have to point out, since the SAM here takes milled furniture, that's not as easy to find. With the 107R taking regular stamped furniture, it'll pretty much fit anything. So if you want to go to a folding stock or railed handguards, that is easier to do. So that might be a consideration. But again, like I said, this was a milled semi-automatic version of an ARM1. This, if you look in Arsenal's catalog, there's not a full auto version anywhere of a stamped gun like this. This is something assembled entirely in the USA, entirely for the US market. Maybe Europe too, but the civilian shooting market. And one thing that always is a little odd to me, these magwell dimples are a little bit off from what you normally see. Arsenal announced at SHOT Show this year, 2020, that they're going to be importing guns from ISD, a Bulgarian company. So I think it's safe to talk about this. I've mentioned it time or time before that the stamped guns they produce, because Arsenal Military, Arsenal AD, Arsenal BG, doesn't show stamped guns on their website, where are they getting the receivers from? Who's doing their stamped receivers? Because why would they set them up in-house just for that? ISD started making stamped receivers on behest of companies like Armory USA, and they did a good gun known as the SSR-85 back when. They did them in both 7.62 and 5.45, and that's what Arsenal announced they would be bringing in again, is the 5.45 version, although it hasn't appeared yet. I have to wonder how much outsourcing is to ISD, because they have the production line for semi-auto stamped receivers, both 1.0 and 1.5 millimeter. But they are also a commercial company, not a military company. And since this was introduced as a economy gun, you have to wonder what they did to meet a price point. Just food for thought. Whereas guns like this just seem to be variants of their military guns, lacking the third pin and all the go fast stuff. But of course they also cost hundreds of dollars more. My point is this. This year, a lot of people have been wanting to buy their first AK, or maybe they've owned them in the past, but they haven't bought any in a while. The Arsenal name, thanks to milled guns like these, as well as very nice kind of semi-custom guns like the classics, have earned Arsenal a very good name, at least in terms of quality, maybe not customer service, but in terms of quality for fit and finish and reliability and all that over the last 20 years. I wonder how many people who actually are buying this gun, the stamped receiver SLR-107R, really thought they were getting something more like this with the milled receiver. Because they read online just how durable, how smooth and high quality Arsenals feel. And so they think SLR-107R, SAM 7R, sounds like the same gun, right? Oh well, the SLR is $1,200 now, which is what they are now. And this you can't even find, but if you do, they're over $1,600 easily. Now I get this one. What are you losing? To be fair, in terms of reliability and durability, well, reliability probably not a lot. Durability, maybe something, but we're talking long term. I have had more than one customer either buy one of these from me on something like Gunbroker or from a totally different vendor. And even though the advert says stamped receiver, blah blah blah, they thought they were getting this. Now, to those customers' credit, they went ahead with their purchase, which I greatly appreciate. But I think it's always better when customers know full well what they're getting before they click the buy button. So, just driving home the point that Arsenal is a brand name, not one single product or product line. And to me, this was introduced as an economy gun, an entry-level gun, and that's exactly what it seems to be. Whereas this is, I don't want to say a deluxe gun, but it is uniquely Bulgarian because of the milled receiver and other features. Well, there's one other gun people wanted me to compare this with, so let's do that quickly and then we'll wrap things up. Now the 107R with brass. The other major gun on the market today in 7.62 39 AKs is the PAP, Zastava, formerly Yugoslavian, today Serbian, Z-PAP, and did a very extensive video when the new Z-PAP came out, the one featuring a 1.5mm stamped receiver and 16.25" cold hammer forge chrome lined barrel. Now that was that. This is my OPAP that I've had, but it's the same configuration for the purposes of this video. So yeah, when people are looking what they can find today, you see WASRs, WBPs, SLR-107Rs, and Z-PAPs. Now the original Z-PAP had a 1.0 receiver, the newer one has the heavier dutier 1.5. And this is a very similar gun, except you do have the thicker RPK type receiver, I guess we could call it that. It also has the heavier barrel from the AK-47. So of the ones we've looked at today, it has the heaviest barrel. And with the new version having chrome lining, it might be one of the better ones. They are also threaded to 14x1 left hand. Now, as sold through Zastava-USA, they do not have bayonet lugs, not yet anyway, but they do have the cleaning rod under the barrel. They take Yugoslavian M70 pattern furniture, which I've always liked. You get a longer handguard, which is always good for barrel heat. The grenade sights I've added, they don't come with them. And you get the Yugoslavian type buttstock, which fastens in a different manner. This too has the bolt carrier kind of left in the polished finish like the WBP, and it also makes it very smooth. Interestingly, whereas the other guns we've looked at here have painted finishes, this retains a kind of military style blued finish. And again, it takes standard double stack magazines and drums. So let's show some range footage of this and then come back for a few comparison thoughts.
Starting.
This is the Z-PAP. Wait. If you're noticing a theme here, you're not incorrect. All of the guns in the market today have extremely similar features. That's just how it is. The differences tend to be in furniture, or type of furniture they can take, maybe a little bit on the finish. For example, the Romanian guns have a basic phosphate finish. And weight, I would actually say the Z-PAP NPAPs are among the heaviest available. They have the 1.5mm receiver, which in and of itself is still lighter than the milled, but then they have the heavier barrel, and they have kind of more substantial furniture. So, you know, It is up to you which you prefer. Because they are so similar, it really does come down to more of a personal preference thing, or maybe just whatever you can find at a good deal. Right now, we are living in a bit of a beggars can't be choosers time. This is true. But people wanted more on the 107R, so there you go. Plenty reliable, but it does reflect the fact that it is a economy gun, you could call it. I would say it has maybe better fit and finish. I don't know. I think I like the blued finish on the Zastava more. But when it comes to things like the rivets and whatnot, the Arsenal probably has the edge. But also keep in mind this gun is now $1,200. And you can still get the new Z-PAPs for under $1,000. Now, my prices I'm throwing out are very relative because the market is highly volatile right now. And with the whole COVID situation, new imports, who knows when it's going to happen. I think I heard the other day that the Zastava factory overseas had to shut down again because of another recent outbreak. So, who knows when that could happen for Bulgaria, what's going on. So there are differences, but not major ones. For me, I still like the Z-PAP or the OPAP more because this is a semi-automatic version of a military gun, the M70B1 or B3 if you will. And as I've said before, the SLR-107R, while it might be a good durable gun, is basically like Bulgaria's Palmetto State Arms gun. That's kind of my final conclusion. It's kind of like their GF3 or what have you, whatever version they're on. May be good, but it has that commercial feel to it with things like the kind of odd shape dimples. Noticed also back here like it has the flat rivet and things. That's not bad, it's just, yeah, it is what it is. So if you want one, great. I'm not saying it's a bad choice. I'm only wanting to make sure you know what it is and what it isn't. This isn't the old milled arsenals of yore. This is the new entry-level arsenal that prices have been driving up on. And there are other good options out there. But the Arsenal's not a bad one if that's kind of what you're in the mood for. But me, myself, and I, and Jade as well, well, we found the 107R to be a perfectly good shooter. It was in no way outstanding or different from what we already own, and since we already have several AKM types, it's one we're going to pass on for now. And all in all, we prefer the WBP, and I definitely prefer the SAM 7R over the SLR-107R, price notwithstanding. But this is something that's been talked about a lot, so there you go. I'm sure I forgot things, but feel free to comment, question below. If you could, as always, like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to help support our channel, please check out the link to our Patreon page. This is Misha, and we will catch you very soon next time.